Okay, well, if I did everything right, we should see the Fabulous Fridays 2023. Is that all right?
That's what we have.
Okay, that's good. Well, just a reminder that we do have our Fabulous Fridays website. And even though Fabulous Fridays will be done today, you can go there and listen again to any that we've done this year, as well as ones that we have done in previous years. So help yourself and enjoy. This is Marsha Goetting, for those of you that I have not had a chance to meet yet, and I'm the Family Economics Specialist with Montana State University Extension. And this is what you call a part of our land grant mission, where we take the university to the people. And I just think it's kind of neat to be able to, well, talk to you. I can't see you. So what I'm going to do is pretend that you are the audience that I saw this past week in Helena. And we had people sitting before tables, and it was just really, really great. And I enjoyed visiting with those people and hope some tuned in today. Our co-host for Fabulous Fridays is Mandie Reed. Mandie Reed comes from Harlowton, that some of us, to show that we've been around for a while, just call it Harlow. But she is our county extension agent there and is doing a super duper job. Very delighted to be able to work with her. Now, as you know, Fabulous Fridays is being sponsored by the Montana 4-H Foundation and also the Montana Center for Youth Development here at Montana State University. Now, today's topic is selecting an attorney in Montana to develop an estate plan. And as I was working on that, I go, you know what? I'm going to do a bonus topic, and I'm going to include some information on preparing for your first meeting with the attorney. Because quite frankly, I see no sense, and I know we have an attorney as a guest today, but I don't see any sense in paying somebody $200 to $300 an hour for basic information that we can provide to you from MSU Extension. Now, we couldn't have done this year or past years without Carrie. Carrie is our assistant, and usually she's trying to do 6 things at once, trying to run this webinar. We'd also like to welcome 289 people who registered, and we also have 17 out-of-staters. So welcome to our Fabulous Fridays in Montana. So Mandie, you know we usually use engagement tools. So why don't you give us a refresher on what tools we're going to be using today?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Marsha. Yeah, we're going to use 5 different engagement tools today to make sure that our webinar is interesting and that you have the opportunity to stay engaged. So our first tool is our special guests. So we are really excited to have Tara Rice, who is joining us today from Helena, Montana, and Jane Wolery, the Executive Director of the Montana 4-H Foundation. So make sure that you stay and hear what they have to say. Our second engagement tool are our poll questions. So we're going to go ahead and do a practice poll right now. And these give you a chance. They'll come up on your screen and you can answer. So this particular poll, you can answer more than one if more than one answer applies. But what actions, if you tuned in last week, what actions did you take as a result of last week's session? So did you share the information with friends and relatives? Did you read some of the materials in the resource section? Did you open a MSA? Did you decide to add money to your existing MSA? Did you add a POD or TOD to your MSA account? Did you, let's see, run some money donation examples? Oh yeah, on the MSU Alumni Foundation website. Or if you didn't attend last week's session, there's a box for you too. So if you just take a minute and answer that poll question, it's a good practice for everybody to make sure you can use those during our session.
Well, and the other advantage, Mandie, is that we get a chance to see what people are doing as a result of the sessions. I like to think that, oh, they're so excited. They're going to run right out there and open an MSA for Montana, put the $4,500 in there, and just feel really good that they've saved about $303 in taxes. Yay!
Yeah, that is great. Okay, so I see that our poll has ended. And our next engagement tool is our chat. So you can drop questions into the chat panel, questions or comments for Marsha or I as we go through the webinar, and then we will stay on afterwards for an extra 15 minutes and try to answer as many of those questions as we can. If we don't get to them, Carrie captures those questions, and then Marsha will send you an email with the answer to those questions as soon as she can. Might take a couple weeks, but we'll get you an answer to those questions too. So you can drop those in the chat panel. And then we have a door prize. So this week we have an all new 4-H gift package door prize. So you have to be present to win, and we will draw that at the end of the webinar. And it's a fabulous door prize of great, all kinds of great stuff. So Marsha is a wildflower enthusiast. So Marsha, how are we going to use wildflowers today in our program?
Well, as you can see, I've got all kinds of framed items in the back of me, and those represent my home office, and my home office is filled with wildflowers. And it's really fun. It just kind of gives me that extra piece that I need in the wintertime when it seems like we don't get to see the ground. But how I'm going to be using flowers with you guys today is to use them as reminders, because sometimes I trigger or think about reminders of a concept. And so I want you to think about some of these, and maybe that will help you remember what we were talking about. So for example, here we have a steer's head. Okay. Can't you just see it there with the ears and the eyes? I mean, what a beautiful plant. And people in Helena didn't believe this was really a flower. They said, but it is, it is. So what I want to do is steer you to information to have ready for your first meeting with your attorney. I want to steer you to become aware of the qualities that you're going to look for in an attorney to help you do your estate plan. And then I also want some of those attributes that an attorney might have if they're going to be helping you settle a probate. So let's get started with, oh my goodness, we have a chocolate lily. And I'm sure that's supposed to remind me of something. Stay tuned. We'll check it out. So what we have for extension is for you, your taxpayer dollars at work, don't forget, is a Mont Guide. And Mont Guide is our term for a fact sheet. And this particular one is called Estate Planning Getting Started in Montana. And what you'll find is if you're dealing with an experienced attorney or a firm with estate planners in it, they're going to have their own forms that they want you to fill out. But we have a checklist in this particular Mont Guide that explains what my attorney should know. Because these are all the basic kinds of information. And like I said, why go in there, sit down, pay $200 an hour to have the attorney say, well, I'll need to know how you have some things titled. For example, if you've got some real estate, typically these are the kinds of things that they want you to become aware of. And one of the most important ones is, how is your property titled? Do you have a sole ownership, joint tenancy with right of survivorship, tenancy in common? Whatever it might be, the attorney wants to know. And as one attorney told me, he said, I made the mistake of believing my dad when dad told me that the property was his tenancy in common. Come to find out, it was a joint tenancy. And at that time, it had a big impact on federal estate taxes. And it was kind of funny because he was about ready to strangle his dad. Okay, how about your checking accounts? Where are those located? And see, some of this is going to be really good for you to have on hand, because you want your personal representative to be able to do things. Well, they first of all need to know where your checking accounts are and how is it titled, and is there a POD on that account? Golly, I finally had to have a separate folder for all my PODs, because when I had it in a folder this thick, it would get messed up with everything else. And I'm the type that kind of changes PODs now and then, just because. Okay, how about your stocks, bonds, and mutual funds? You need to, again, very important, how they're titled, what the cost basis of that is. In other words, what did you pay for it when you bought it? And how many and when, and all those kinds of things are very handy to know. And then if you still have a mortgage, and many of us do, Is that debt a joint or is it individual? When's it due? How much do you have to pay on that? So the idea is you're starting to get yourself organized. And really, I know it takes some time to do this. So get started and then give yourself a piece of chocolate to reward yourself for getting this done. Now, here's a poll question. How many attorneys do you think practice law in the state of Montana? 4,084, 3,191, 2,118, or 1,704? So how many attorneys do we have practicing law? That doesn't include the ones that are retired unless they're still of counsel in a firm or another. So, well, Mandie, I don't get to see the polls today. So, do you see them?
I don't see them either.
Okay, we're going to have to depend on Carrie to be able to get that information out to us to see what percent we're saying what. So, what'd you find, Carrie?
Marsha, 20% said that 4,084, 15% said 3,191, 15% said 2,118, and 14% said the 1,704.
Oh, well, this was a great poll because you're just all over the place with it. But of course, it is 3,191 for the state of Montana. Those others include other states. Now, I can understand why there'd be over 4,000 in Hawaii. Can you imagine practicing law there? And then quite a lower amount there in Wyoming. So thank you for participating in the poll. So Mandie, this is a fun picture, and I didn't even know what it was when I took the photo, and it's out of California. But what does this desert monkey have to, monkey flower have to do with selecting an attorney?
Well, it's going to remind us, don't monkey around. You need to be really thoughtful as you're choosing an attorney. So there's some things that you want to think about before you visit your attorney. And the first one is to decide what your goals are and then write them down. That way you'll know what you're going to ask your attorney for when you get there. And again, if you need help with this, definitely check out our estate planning mock guide, the Getting Started mock guide, I guess. And in there are, on page 3, there are 20 different examples of estate planning goals and objectives that you might want to think about, because there might be things that come up that you hadn't really thought about. So we'll go over a couple of those today. One objective that you might have would be to provide security for your surviving spouse. That just might be something you want to think about. Another objective, and you might want to consider it a little bit differently, is to provide security for an incapacitated spouse. So your spouse might be suffering from dementia or some other consideration, and you might want to set that up a little bit differently. Something else to think about is to consider your farm or ranch business and how you want that to transfer and how you want that to be run. So that's definitely a consideration for a lot of people in Montana. Something else you might want to consider is how you want to divide your assets for your children. So do you want equal treatment? Do you want equitable treatment? What will that look like, and what are some ideas? So that's definitely something you want to spend some time thinking about before you visit your attorney. Some other things might be some strategies to minimize probate and settlement costs. And then this is a great time to think about providing a bequest to your favorite nonprofit. Of course, our favorite nonprofit is the Montana 4-H Foundation, but you might have a local community foundation or some other nonprofit that you hold near and dear to your heart, and you might want to think about how you want to include that. So you don't want to monkey around, and you want to think about and decide on your estate planning goals and objectives and what that will look like before you meet with your attorney. So this is a lovely flower. It's called a butterwort, and it is a carnivorous plant. And I asked Marsha if I thought I could plant some of those all around my house in the summertime, because I don't know if you saw it gobble up that fly, but I thought that would be super handy. So Marsha, how are you going to build this into our WebEx today?
Okay, well, of course, I told her this is one that grows up in the glacier fall or glacier area, and it's where there's really wet water running, just real slow type of thing. And it is funny when you see one of those with a fly stuck in it. So let's see what these have to do. Well, what we're going to do here is look a little bit at complexity. And my co-author of this particular publication, Ed Eck, is an attorney. He's also a professor emeritus, but I'm going to take that title away because I know he's teaching this semester, and he used to be the dean of the law school here at the University of Montana. And in our discussions, he just kept saying, the more complex the situation is, the better or more qualified that your attorney has to be. And of course, if you're in a federal estate tax bracket, and I think most of us that are probably here today aren't, but if you should be in that situation, there are some planning tools that could be utilized to minimize those federal estate. But look at this. Right now, you can have 12,920,000 and you're not in a federal estate tax bracket. And of course, we got to keep our eyes on the news because I hear there's some new things being proposed, and we'll see how many of those come to fruition. Now, your attorney is also going to want to know about your retirement accounts and, of course, who you have designated to receive those. And we in Montana are blessed to have, our traditional IRAs and the Roth. There's 403B plans for those that are involved in education. We've got the 457, which is the state deferred compensation plan. And then you out there in the public sector are looking at 401ks. And then if you've got a business, whether it be a farm ranch or a downtown business, you're probably going to have two different attorneys that you would consider, because farm ranch is really a specialty. So is downtown business. And then how big is your business? And of course, if you've got a partnership, an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, we got to have a smart attorney that's going to help us do that kind of sharing. Now, another thing, some people do own state property out of the country. And I don't think that that's necessarily out there in Puerto Rico, but it could be in Canada. And those that are close to the line, that might be something that would be important to share with your attorney, as well as if you happen to own property in another state. Because when you have real property in another state, that state controls unless you have a will. Okay, now you can have a personal savings account over there in North Dakota, but because you're a resident of Montana, it's Montana law that would control that. So my butterwort's just saying the more complex you have of the assets, the more the competency that you want to have in your attorney. So that's what the butterwort. And I keep calling it myself a mugwort, and I think I've been watching too many of Harry Potter things. Now, this happens to be a ghost flower. And I was visiting with a friend in California, and I didn't know where it was, but it doesn't matter. I always take a picture of something. And I thought, oh, a ghost flower. That reminds me of Casper, the friendly ghost. And what do we got here? Oh, my goodness. Casper has a big, big family. And then we see it's complicated. And then it gets even more complicated. So what do we have here? We can have situations where there's single people with a lot of heirs, a single person without them. You may have a couple that's in a very long marriage and they have kids that are theirs. You have blended families, his, hers, and ours. And last week I ran into a 7th generation individual that has been in Montana. And I was just shocked. I didn't think there was any of those out here, but there are. So you've also got couples with no kids. So you see, it can be kind of complex or it could be not so. And then if you've got a family member with a disability that I run into almost every session I do, and I tell them about special needs trusts because we find they're out there, but we don't have as many attorneys in Montana that are doing these. And unfortunately, we're reaching retirement age for some, and those people aren't available anymore. So you got to ask around about who would be great for handling a special needs trust. The other thing that is out there now is an ABLE savings account. And we have that on our Fabulous Friday website. But what is happening is that one needs to be updated. For example, and it is updated, it just hasn't been published yet. You can put $17,000 in one of these ABLE accounts. And it's really handy so that that person can use that to purchase some things they might need, but it doesn't disqualify them for the benefits that they might be receiving, like Medicaid or SSI. Then we've got all kinds of trusts out there. In our class here, we have done revocable and testamentary trusts, but there's others out there. AB, bypass, Q-tip, Q-dot, even ILET. Some of them have short names and then others don't. And an ILET is just simply a irrevocable life insurance trust, and that might be something that your attorney would recommend. So my tip from the Ghost Flower is the more complex your family, the more competency that your person will need. So let's do another poll question. And Mandie, how many attorneys are in the largest firm in Montana? So are there 330 in there? Are there 250, 175, or 50?
I took a guess at this one yesterday and I got it wrong. So I'm curious to see what everybody has to say.
Yeah, I was surprised. I guess I just didn't think we had any large firms. I mean, I'd heard of them, but I didn't realize how many can be in that one firm. And that firm now has been expanding into the community. So we have like a branch office here in Bozeman, and they also are in Helena. And so that's how they also get a lot more. So, Carrie, what result do we have here?
So 4% said 330, 12% said 250, 29% 175, and 23% said 50.
Okay. Well, the oldest and largest firm does have 175 attorneys. So that reminds me of some of the TV shows that sometimes you watch where there's these big attorney firms with the skyscrapers in the big cities, and they work and work and work and more than the 40 hours a week by a long shot. Okay, so this beautiful flower, I really like it, of course I like them all, is a spiderwort. So Mandie, I challenge you to make a spiderwort relevant to today's topic.
All right. Well, did you know that a spider is a software program that kind of travels through the internet and indexes websites for search engines? I did not know that. So today we're going to search the spider's webs for attorneys. So we have a few ideas for you, but we're going to look at the internet directories that evaluate attorneys and provide a little bit of insight into those. So one of those is the avvo.com. This is an example that you might find that's going to have a resource for attorneys in Montana. Another one that you might find is the Martindale rating service. So this service is actually other peers are going to rate attorneys based on their ethical standards and performance. So that's one that you might find. Oh, and by the way, the links to these sites are on our webpage, so you can check them out for yourself if you want to. Another one that you might find, another site that you might find if you put this into the a search into your browser, is the Montana Lawyer Referral Service. And that's a website that also is just another place to check. And they have a phone number as well.
Yeah, and Mandie, this particular one I was very curious about because I didn't know they had it. So I went to the website, and I've got to say I was just a wee bit disappointed because it is one that's sort of like a national that the Montana built into. And so I just pretended to be looking for an attorney in Bozeman, and maybe I did something wrong, but they had none that do estate planning. Well, That's not true. We do have them in town. So I would suggest do a phone call first and then do experiment with it. And you might find more satisfactory results than I did. But it is available. And what we're looking for, I think, are ways to, more information is good till you reach the point where it's clear up here and you just can't have anymore. But it does help.
Exactly. The more information you have and the more places to start and gather that information, the better off we're going to be. So once you have some places to look, you can definitely check out the websites of the attorneys to learn more about them. And some attorneys have personal websites and some have their firms have websites, but they're going to have a short bio and maybe a photograph of the attorney, and let you know a little bit about them and their and their firm. So what you're gonna want to do, the attorneys on their websites are going to list their areas of practice. So when we're looking for an attorney for our estate planning, we're going to want to look specifically for estate planning, estate administrative assistance, or services, probate, taxation. We're going to look for those topics because attorneys also can focus on areas of practice. And so we want to make sure that we have an attorney that is focused in our area.
Yeah, just a thing. When I started several years ago, of course, the attorneys could not advertise. I mean, they couldn't even put in the yellow pages that their focus was limited to estate planning. And so I've seen a lot of change with this over the past 40 years, that now you do see that kind of advertising. And even great big old, what do you call those on the highway?
Billboards.
Yes, billboards. They have attorneys on those in some of our bigger cities. Usually those tend to focus, though, on accidents. And sometimes I think it's because we're so busy looking at the billboards that, you do have an accident. Sorry, got off track there.
That's all right. So some additional information that might be listed are the attorney's degrees, whether or not they have specific degrees, whether they're a certified public accountant, what their professional experience is, and then their community volunteerism. And that's just going to give you a little bit of insight into what they value as a person and where they spend their time, which I think is kind of cool. One thing to consider, it's important to some people, are they published? Do they publish in the law journals? Are they a Montana lawyer? Are they published by the State Bar of Montana? And then maybe does this attorney have blogs or podcasts? And what those are going to do is let you kind of know the vibe or the voice of the attorney, and you might decide how you feel about them based on those things.
Yeah, and I don't know really how important this would be to a lot of people, but certainly at the university system and the law school, it's, publish or perish type of situation. And this Montana lawyer is their own informational newsletter, only it's thicker than it's more like a magazine. But they do have some really good articles in there about the different kinds of laws that we do have in Montana. And I know it'll be filled with information about this particular legislature and what bills get passed and which ones don't.
That is great insight. So once you find an attorney that you want to contact, there's different ways to contact them. So a lot of them might have an online form that you can fill out for a contact. Just as a word of caution, I have not had awesome luck with those forms. I think a lot of times they get lost somewhere. So if you fill out an online form and you don't get a response back, go ahead and send them an email, or maybe just pick up the phone and give them a call, because those forms can get lost. And then you can also look to see if they have memberships in professional organizations. So
yeah, this particular one, Mandie, is one that I have worked with for over 40 years now. And of course, people come and go. And what they focus on is continuing legal education in the estate planning area. What we're seeing right now is a lot of attorneys, yeah, they're graduating, but they're not picking estate planning as an area like maybe we would say the good old days. And so I have them review the mock guides to make sure that what Extension is saying is legal. So I always ask an attorney, do you belong to the better group? That's what they call themselves. And, you know, I think it's a double play on words there. Maybe they are better than the rest, but they get really involved, like in the legislature right now. Some of them have done an outstanding job of, you know, looking at the consequences of some of the proposals that are being made. And some of the proposals, maybe from one guy's opinion, should not be utilized. And so I just think if they don't belong to the better group, they're just not really doing a lot in the estate planning area. Now, that's my own personal opinion based on my experience in the last 40 years.
Well, it's definitely something to check into. You can also look to see if they belong to professional organizations at a national level. So do they belong to the Real Property Trust and Estate Law section of the American Bar Association? And another national group that you could check to see is if they belong to the American College of Trust Estate Council. And this is a national nonprofit. And then a National Nonprofit Association of Attorneys and Law Professors chosen by their peers. And then check out some referrals. Ask your friends, ask families, ask your banker, credit union professionals, your certified financial planners, accountants, or people you work with. Ask them who they have used. And then don't just take their recommendation. There's a couple questions you might want to think about asking them also. What did you think of them? What was your experience like? And then ask them to explain, why they liked them or maybe why they didn't like them. We all have different reasons and different things what I might not like about a professional might have no bearing on how you would feel about them as a professional. So ask those questions. You can also browse the yellow pages by attorneys' areas of practice. I don't even know the last time I picked up a yellow pages.
I know that's probably dating us, but there are people out there, Mandie, that just don't have the cell phone in their hand all the time.
It's so
they
true.
utilize. But I was even trying to find the Bozeman Hospital the other day, and it wasn't in the yellow pages. I go, what is going on here?
We still have phone books in Harlowton. I know a lot of people don't. So anyway, that is definitely a resource to think about. That would give you some phone numbers to call. So we have our third poll question. Have you checked out an attorney using the web? So is this something that our participants have done? It's a simple yes or no. So we'll give you just a minute to answer that.
While they're answering, I might share a little story here with a grandma type. And grandma type went into the law firm, and they set her up with one of their newer attorneys. And she was furious because he made fun of dying. He wasn't serious enough for her. And, you know, my thought was the poor young man was just not experienced enough, that you just got to treat grandmas different than you do somebody that's your own age. So he didn't get the business, but an older person in the firm did. So it worked out. So Carrie, what do we got here with people? Have they utilized the web to check out an attorney?
Marsha, only 23% have used the web, and the rest said no.
Yeah, okay. Well, those of you that haven't had that chance, and we know there are people out there that you don't have a printer, you don't have a computer, and this is the time to go visit those grandkids or nieces and nephews, and they can probably even do it on their phone, but let them help you out it just in that extra checking that you might want to do.
Yeah, definitely. So, some tips from our spider wart are to remember to request referrals, browse the yellow pages, check out the internet, and then go ahead and spend some time visiting the websites and just find all the information you can about the attorneys.
Oops.
So, so Marsha, what is the name of this flower? I love this one.
Oh, I do too. But every time I look at it, I think of being surrounded by four, count them, four umbrellas because the wind was blowing like crazy. And this was at Glacier National Park. And it is called a pink owl clover. And of course, I got to use the owl symbolism of saying wisdom and smart. And we're going to talk about how to do practice observing, listening when you schedule this meeting that you have with the attorney. And you'll want to be right out there with the type of issues that you have. And the attorney also will be asking questions, what is the situation? And you've got some of these families are complex. I have been in Eastern Montana where a lady had 15 children. And I go, oh, my dad came from a family of 16 kids. So, yeah, things are a little more in depth with those. And then what kind of competency we need. Some will help you with charitable giving. And we've talked about deferred gift annuities. We didn't get to the charitable remainder trusts, but that might be something your attorney would want to visit with you about. And I kind of chuckled when somebody made the recommendation that an attorney had asked them if they had quarrelsome families. And I go, what's a quarrelsome? Well, those are the ones that just are guaranteed. You've got three daughters, they're going to fight. One is going to take, they've already said they're going to take it to court. No matter what the will says, boy, they're going to sue. Well, okay. An attorney would like to be alerted to those kind of people that are in the family. And then one question I ask when I visit with an attorney is what percent of your practice consists of estate planning, estate administration, probate, that type of thing? Because when an attorney tells me 5%, oh, that's just not enough. I want somebody that spends more time than that. And of course, if you're an attorney in that big law firm, you get to really focus on estate planning and probably even a certain section of estate planning. If you're an attorney that's maybe, and I'm not picking on Ekalaka, I like Ekalaka, I've been to Ekalaka, but you may only have one attorney in town, and that attorney is also the county attorney or city attorney or something along those lines. And it's really difficult for those individuals to specialize. I remember one individual when he graduated from law school was in Miles City and tried to branch out because he wanted to do estate planning. And it just didn't work out because there weren't enough people, to do estate planning at that time. And then let's ask the attorney what legal documents that they're going to prepare for us. And here's an example of a couple. They went to the attorney and he said, you need a financial power of attorney. You're going to need a healthcare power of attorney. And of course, I would say now Extension has those. Those are at our website. A will, and we have a mock guide on wills with the separate listing. Who gets grandma's yellow pie plate? How about revocable trusts or testamentary? And Bud and Sarah wanted to visit it about those. What's the difference, etc. The transfer on death deed, he was actually making a recommendation for that. And then something new that we have, and we're going to have a mock guide coming out really soon, is your electronically stored information. You can do this. A law was passed that gives your personal representative the authority then to get information that's electronically stored. They had to pass that law because so many of the providers were saying, nope, person's dead. Nope, we're not going to give you anything. Well, they wanted to take care of that. And then you need to ask, when will these papers be ready for signature? I was really delighted that the last time I redid my will, that the attorney just sent it online. And that meant I had plenty of time to look it over rather than going in the office, sitting there and feeling the pressure. Oh, I've got to sign this. And this way I found an area that I thought needed a little bit of improvement, simply because, maybe we hadn't communicated enough. And I do have a sad story here of a gentleman that I met at one of my meetings. And what had happened is they had gone to see an attorney, and it was 6 months ago. And his wife died before the will got signed. And so we don't want to have that happen. You be the squeaky wheel that makes noise. And sometimes you do have to be that way to get the documents that you want for your situation. So my tips from my Al Clover is do schedule the meeting with the attorney. Now, this is just the first meeting. So that's why when you call, you indicate that you are looking for an attorney to handle some business. And some attorneys will say, come in, I'll talk to you for a half hour, and there's no charge for that. And the reality is the attorney is just wanting to see what kind of person you are, just as you're evaluating them. And that's certainly legitimate on their part. And when you're in there, practice observant listening. And do take a pen and paper, that's fine. Have a list of the questions that you want to ask. Okay, Mandie, I'm going to try to get you again. How can you make a blood root relevant to selecting an attorney?
Are going to get directly to the root of the matter. And I do also just love this flower. So after the meeting, really sit down and assess your thoughts and feelings about your meet and greet with your attorney. You need to really think about, were you satisfied with their answers to the questions that you had? Did you feel like they answered those questions in a way that you could understand? Did they really listen to you? Do you feel like they heard you and they were really understanding what your goals were and thinking about ways that they could help you achieve those goals? Did they communicate clearly with you? Did they answer those questions or ask you questions in a way that you could understand? Maybe eye contact is a really big deal to you. So were they making eye contact with you, or did you feel like they were distracted? And maybe not as committed to the meeting as you would have liked them to have been. Did they explain the legal terms that they used during the meeting? So if they used terms that you didn't know, did they explain those? And if you didn't know them and you asked, how did you feel like they responded to you? Were they trying to just impress you with all the cool stuff they know, or were they really trying to connect with you and explain things so that you understood them? And then you want to also make sure that, did they explain how their fees were calculated? So that's really important. Did they tell you how that was going to happen and what those fees would look like? So in 2021, there was a limit put on the fees. So the fees that an attorney could collect, we'll start here, that the personal representative could collect 1.5 times that was allowable, or that the attorney could collect 1.5 times the amount that was allowable by the personal representative. So those fees were set. So a personal representative could collect 3% for the first $40,000 and 2% in excess of that. So then that also set the rate that the attorney could collect. So the cost of probate for a $200,000 estate could be that the personal representative could collect $4,400 and then the attorney could collect $6,600. So if you think about this estate, maybe all mom had was a CD and a house and a checking account. So does that seem like a reasonable amount of money for that estate? And so that was then changed to a reasonable fee. So we need to ask our attorneys how they calculate their reasonable fees. And we want to understand that. Is it hourly? Is it per document? How is that calculated? So that we understand that. So in the example we had before, the attorney told the personal representative not to take the representative fee. Why do you think they might have done that? And that was because if she had left the money in the estate, it was going to transfer to her as part of the estate and it wouldn't be taxed. But if she had taken that money as a personal representative, it would be taxable income. So just as an example, if you took that fee, the Montana tax would be $304, kind of rounded. Our federal tax might be $1,000. And so we're going to lose $1,400 to our taxes, where if we had left that money in the estate, we wouldn't have paid that money in taxes. Now, there might be an instance where you would need to take the personal representative fee. So if we had a really complicated situation, maybe there were 4 children and one was appointed as the personal representative and they were needing to take their annual leave or vacation time to deal with things, maybe they were being hassled by their siblings, then they might really want to take that personal representative fee to kind of make up for some of that lost income and resources that they've had to put in. So that's just a situation and dependent and something to think about. So in the chat panel, we would like you to describe experiences you've had or heard of with your attorney. Just brief, in a sentence or two. If you could go ahead and drop that in there, that just gives us some reference for experiences that people in the audience might have had.
Marsha and Mandie, someone did say that they were looking for an estate planning attorney last fall, but they couldn't find one that was available with less than a 7 to 8 month wait.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's because they're just not, there's not as many of them out there as we've had, that we've had so many retirements. And certainly I've experienced that because I was just a youngster, of course, when I started working with them. And unfortunately, some of them have passed away. Mandie, we need to move it on here.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I'm taking too long. So make sure that you think about your thoughts and feelings after you meet with your attorney and decide if that's somebody you feel like you could talk about family issues with. So we have a poll question just for fun. What is the net worth of Judge Judy? And maybe we could, since we are taking up time, we could wrap that one up.
Okay. And probably this isn't as important as moving along. So I'll just give you the answer there of 480 million. Pretty good for somebody that started a show using her abilities to share. Okay, Mandie, do this very quickly.
Okay, so obviously time has slipped right away from us. So we want to remind you that all of the mock guides we talked about today, the resources and the recordings are on our website, and that is listed here. You can also use the QR code, and those links are put in the chat if you want to check them out there also. Please don't forget about the mock guides and fact sheets that are available at your local extension offices and your reservation offices. Looking forward, we have the Wednesday Wisdom being sponsored by AARP, and there's dates here if that's something that you're interested in. And we just really want to thank you for taking time to participate in the Fabulous Fridays with us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope the information that we've provided has been valuable, as well as the resources. And so from all of us at the team that put this together, thank you for your time and for being part of it. And now, since I've been way too chatty, I will turn it over to Jane.
And Jane, this is Marsha saying, yes, you can have an extra 5 minutes because we cheated you. And I don't want to cheat you and Tara. And it wasn't you, Mandy, it was me. I was getting carried away. So, Jane, it's all yours.
All right. So, and Tara Rice is our final fabulous guest for the Fabulous Fridays in 2023. And I'm very excited. Tara is an attorney, so this topic she may weigh in a little bit on as we get to the end. I'm glad you're giving us extra time because I could just listen to Tara, the way she expresses herself, I just find so fun and interesting. But anyway, Tara, we might as well get started. I suppose you were around 14 years old when I first met you, and I was new to MSU Extension and 4-H in Teton County. And I have this very vivid recollection of your mom, Linda, and your grandma, Helen Rice, picking me up to go with you to compete at the Make It With Wool contest where you had created a lovely wool outfit. So do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Montana Wool Growers Association hosts that Making Yourself with Wool contest. I don't know if there still are, there were regional contests and a statewide contest. And so people would knit and sew and weave clothing made from wool. And then we would go and kind of have a full competition and presentation about it. It was just an incredible display of kind of the textile abilities of people in Montana. And my most vivid memory of you coming to Teton County was actually before that, when you came to the fair up from Wyoming before you started, just resplendent in a broomstick skirt. It was one of those 90s flowing bright broomstick skirts. So textiles and the kind of making ability of Montanans is vivid in those early memories.
Yeah. So now, do you still do any textile arts or sewing of any sort?
Yeah, I do. I have a simple loom and do really simple weaving projects. I still knit a lot, and sometimes I sew. Not so much garments anymore, but I like to make quilts, and I have a set of watercolor paintings, but it's really only to kind of experiment with something that I want to make. I think that in Montana, the skills that in my family, women have making objects with all sorts of fabric and material products are just, it's for me an incredible source of connection. This kind of material history in my family of the things that women learned from their mothers and grandmothers, and that I learned from them. It's kind of the only skill set I have for creative making, so it's the one that I use, and it makes me feel really connected to the people in my family, and also really connected to my part of the state.
It's very much a heritage thing. And as you were talking, I was thinking, and every year I put on my Christmas table topper that your grandma Helen made for me. So it does provide that connection. And I think 4-H teaches youth how to build many things, how to grow. I think those skills are so good for our mental health, and then also that connection that we provide through 4-H. And speaking of connections, you and I, as you were in your upper high school years, taught some classes together. Do you remember about those?
Yeah. The one that I remember most vividly was a class where it was a bubble class. It was kind of it was a mix of, this is classic to 4-H, it was a mix of kind of creative work and then also STEM education. So we would talk about viscosity and surface tension of the bubble solution we were using. And then we had a little swimming pool that we filled full of bubble solution and a hula hoop wrapped in yarn, and would lift it up and just completely encase little 4-Hers in these huge bubbles. When we did it in Shoto, we were out behind the Old Trail Museum, right along where the stream flows behind there. It was gorgeous and really fun to do with kids, littler kids.
Yeah. So summer camp type, day camp sort of experiences there. And that youth experiences and science program, the bubbles portion of that curriculum was the most requested out of that particular science curriculum, but it was really experiential learning. Like, why does the bubble float? Why does it pop? Why is it round? Can you make it a different color? Just a lot of types of inquiry-based learning. And I always enjoyed, as an extension educator, working with the 4-H youth to teach something, and our volunteers do the same. 4-H is really known for those youth-adult partnerships, I think, and there's just huge benefits to those. And I have a background in mental health and counseling with my degrees, and so I really see 4-H as this exemplary program with that factor for mental health, protective factors there, just the connectiveness and youth adult partnerships, sense of belonging, all kinds of things like that. So thinking about my counseling degree makes me think about a totally different type of counseling. That you were a 4-H counselor probably, right? It's been a while back in my memory, so remind me.
That's right, it was, yeah. Yeah.
And what did you like about the camp experience and the camp counseling project?
Well, we were, it's just so fun to be in the mountains in a beautiful place. And it's kind of everything with 4-H is that, you're working on some shared project that's usually really interesting and everybody's curious about it, and you're kind of following the curiosity of the kids and the kind of older leaders, high school leaders and adult leaders. But at the same time, the thing that's really neat about camp is that you're also there for, if you're a camp counselor and you have a cabin full of 9-year-olds, you're helping them get ready for bed and feel comfortable and feel safe. And, in a way, it's kind of a microcosm of the broader 4-H experience where you've got youth, Cloverbuds, I think, can't go to camp, though some of us broke that and got to go when we were really little. But, you've got smaller kids and then older kids that are teaching and helping and supporting and taking care of the smaller kids. And then maybe our parents' age or the county extension agent age of people that were kind of helping and supporting too. And then, my grandmother who would judge at the county fair every year. It's this kind of nesting doll of, care. And I felt like when I was a high schooler that I was the one who was teaching and leading, but, I was surrounded by these other generations who were teaching and leading me. And I got to kind of learn through teaching, I guess. The process of having to explain things made me sure I was kind of clear on it myself. But I think, kind of back to your point about mental health, I think it's almost an ideal arrangement for that because people are so kind of wrapped into community and are needed. My grandma had to show up for fair every summer and her judging skills were needed. And I think kind of being needed and being so involved in a varied and creative way in your community is good for all of us, from the grandmas to the Cloverbuds.
You are so eloquent in how you put things. I always enjoy listening to you about that. And my mind is firing on 10 more questions I want to ask you. And you said, I kind of thought I was teaching. You were teaching. I remember you took on a leadership project in those later years where you designed the whole experience around an outdoor hike and brought in specialists to teach, did the advertising through our 4-H newsletter, arranged for all the extra adults for safety and so on. Tell us a little bit about one of those, if you would.
Yeah, one of the neat things about being in Teton County is that, many of us grew up kind of out on the plains in front of the mountains. I grew up on a ranch, but it's, farming and ranching and kind of nice little small towns in Teton County. And so we grew up on this kind of working lands landscape. But then, there's the Rocky Mountain front there that kind of, abuts the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. So which is the largest wilderness complex in the lower 48, and it is just huge and wild. So I led a couple hikes taking 4-Hers, and I remember one of them, there was a group of Japanese exchange students that were there with us that were doing a cultural exchange through 4-H. So it was this little multicultural crew of kids trooping into the mountains. And, it's neat. So many of us grew up on these working lands, on ranch lands, on farms where there's kind of real attention to the soils. And we're seeing some of the wildflowers that were shown through the presentation. We're seeing these plants that are familiar, but are in a different context. And it was fun to be able to bring in the expertise of some of the adults in the communities. We had you reminded me of search and rescue there to talk about safety. We had the, county weeds roundup came to help too, which is so interesting because weeds are an important issue for those of us in agriculture because of, the need to protect our crops from weeds and our grasslands from weeds. But weeds are also a major threat to biodiversity. So as you get into the mountains, weed management is really important too. So it was just one of those things where there's so much expertise in the community. We live in such a special place. It was really fun to just to put together a couple of day trips for us all to get into a different environment.
And honestly, I have ever since been telling teens they could do this. Tara Rice did it once. You could do this. You could plan this, because it was some of the few times I ever got to go out and experience. So you really were an impetus for me and my family to enjoy the outdoors. And as we think of our great natural resources in Montana and the benefit to youth participating in outdoor activities, whether it's on hikes like these or through our overnight camping programs in counties, I really feel like you queued me up to tell the people listening that we are very interested in finding funding for our entire outdoor education program in Montana. And we have a goal of $30,000 a year in funding for our outdoor education programming. Or, if somebody just happens to want to fill a $3 million permanent endowment so that we would have an outdoor education program specialist, that would be great, because we want to ensure that the MSU Extension agents, the volunteer 4-H leaders, the youth, and that we all receive training and activities through outdoor education, because it is really important, and it doesn't take much to find good research on why that's important in broad spectrums, but I also think in terms of mental health. Tara, you did a little bit of everything in 4-H, a wide variety. You've mentioned range science, weeds, textiles. What do you think, and you can share a few more of those experiences, but what do you think you gained from your 4-H experiences that took you into the rest of your life?
I think in almost every aspect of 4-H, there's this, learning through doing, making and kind of like applied skills. But then in almost every stage, there's this need to communicate and work with other people on those projects. And so some of the most important skills I got from 4-H, I think of, going to the county fair as a third grader, and sitting down with a judge to explain, some culottes and a t-shirt that I sewed. And, this judge is there to kind of grill you and have you kind of explain what you did and walk through the process. And that skill, I think, is, and I might say this later if I have an opportunity, but I feel like if you're looking for an attorney to support you, you're probably going to be looking for the same things that the judge is looking for from that third grader. Can you explain, do you have a deep enough knowledge that you can in a clear way explain to me, what you've done, what we need to do next, kind of why it is the way that it is? Those communication skills and the ability to kind of understand something deeply enough in order to communicate it in a simple way to somebody else on the spot, getting peppered with questions, those skills are useful in every aspect of life.
Yeah, I always think of I know you and I have a very big love for the communications contest in 4-H, and I always say the best professionals are the ones who can teach, who can explain to you and communicate well. And I think our communication programs in 4-H really set people up for their careers as professionals. And so thinking about that, you obviously people are seeing how you're bright, you're articulate, eloquent, and you were that way from the time I knew you. You always seem to be looking for the ways to build your skills and improve. So if you could tell us a little bit about something new you're learning now, because I know you're probably always learning and growing, and then a little bit about your career path. It's fascinating. We'll have to be mindful of time, but I'd like people to know a little bit about what you do as an attorney or have done.
Absolutely. My practice right now is focused on finance, which is my background, real estate, and kind of general corporate matters, helping people form companies or buy and sell businesses. And the thing that I'm learning most about lately is in the real estate space, because it's so particular to state law and it's so, in many instances, local too. So I was doing kind of title review on a property the other day and looking at old, kind of like archival in a way. I was looking at, recorded instruments against the property that were written in cursive, 120 years ago. And so learning that it's a really fun area of law because it's so local, it's so tied to place and often tied to particular families. And so I'm kind of always learning. The real property space is a source of just constant learning, which is really fun. I'll try to. It's my kind of my arc, I guess, is one of those classic. You like circumnavigate the world just to end up where you started. It's kind of one of those classic stories. So I'll try to give a quick, arc of what I've done. I grew up in Teton County. I went to college in Seattle because the smartest kid that I knew in FFA and 4-H from Hobson went to this Catholic college in Seattle. So I went there too. It was a great, great experience. I studied economics and wanted to work in international economic development, and was able to do that. For the first 2 years after college, I lived abroad. I lived in a rural part of northern China, kind of close to Siberia. And then I got a Fulbright fellowship to do economic research in Trinidad off the coast of Venezuela in the southern West Indies. And so I was in Trinidad for a year. And particularly when I was in Trinidad, I would sort of be asked, like, who are you? Who are you to say that we should be doing this for economic development? And there are people who have long, important careers in international economic development who get very comfortable with how they can provide, skills and resources and are comfortable. But I always thought that was just a good question. I'm like, I don't know, So I wanted to continue to work in community and economic development, but in places where I felt more rooted. So I wanted to work in rural community economic development in the US, I decided. I came back to the US, I went to law school at Yale, and it's good to be in a place with a good endowment because then I got a fellowship to work in the federal government funded by Yale, working at the the Federal Rural Development Agency. And then I was a policy staffer in something called the White House Rural Council and got to work across a whole range of policy issues in rural America all over the country and travel a little bit around the country with that work too. I decided after a couple years doing straight policy work that I did want to practice and joined a big global law firm back east doing project development. So I worked on big energy and infrastructure projects that were all had a kind of public-private partnership component like I had worked on in the federal government. And then I knew I wanted to come back to Montana. So in around 2017 or so, came back to Montana and became the director of the Montana Department. I guess it was a little bit later. My first job back in Montana was director of the Montana Department of Commerce, which is the same portfolio I'd worked on at the federal level, infrastructure development, business development, and affordable housing. And that job was tied to the administration of a governor and ended when that governor's administration ended. So that job ended and I went back into private practice. So I'm still working on a lot of those same things, supporting businesses, supporting infrastructure projects. And it's just fun to be back in a really kind of nerdy, brainy area of law.
It is so interesting the experiences that you've had, and I think as we have our different guests on Fabulous Fridays, part of what we're sharing is just the wonderful foundation that 4-H has provided for people as they launch into whatever it is going to be in their life, whether they are all over the globe, whether they are back in Montana and rooted here, as you so beautifully put. And I think, I won't ask you to give any more closing arguments around the value of 4-H, but if anybody does need more convincing, I'm sure they could call Tara or they can contact me through the 4-H Foundation. We've been talking through Fabulous Fridays series about estate planning and leaving, charitable contributions to important nonprofits in our state through your estate planning. And I just want to remind people, you don't have to wait. You can give now. You can give today through monthly online giving. There's research how giving is good for us, for our mental well-being, and also even it has some aspects to our physical well-being. So with that, just going to leave you all of you with a little tip. We've kind of weaved mental wellness all the way through this, and I just encourage you for your own mental well-being. Every night as you finish your day, think about what you have given in the world and what you have received from others. It will reset your brain if you do that every evening. And then in the morning when you wake up, you can think to yourself, what am I going to bring forward for others today? And how am I going to pay attention for what I'm going to receive? So with that, we're going to roll back to Marsha and Mandie so they can continue giving us knowledge and we can receive that education. And Tara, thank you so much. You and I could probably talk for hours and hours, but I don't know if, we probably have the time today for all of our guests to stay around for that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jane. Talk about eloquent. I think I heard a little bit of that there at the end. And also, thank you, Tara. It's great to hear your background and and how 4-H has helped you become who you are today. And I just got to tell you a little something about joking with the weeds. You see, when I started taking photographs of flowers, I really didn't know a weed from a flower. And if it looked like a flower to me, it was neat. So I took a picture of a hound's tongue. And I took a photo up real close of a leafy spurge. And I took it to Jane, who is our plant horticulture type specialist. And Jane said, Marsha, those are not pretty little flowers. Those happen to be noxious weeds. Oops. But
Well, to be clear, that's Jane Mangold, because if you brought me a plant ID, you'd be in trouble.
mm,
I was just looking around. I think I have the Spurge card, but it's not handy here.
Yeah, the spurge she wanted a copy of one so that she could send it to one of her colleagues. So yeah, sometimes we can use it for that purpose as well. Well, I had a chance to just take a quick look at the chat section while you guys were talking, and we did have one person that wanted to know what a POD is. And a POD is a payable on death designation. And this is something that you can put on your checking account, savings account, certificates of deposit, and even your United States savings bonds. And what this does is allow for you to just say, you want this person to receive that, and you then don't have to have that item go through the legal process of probate to go to that individual. It just happens because that's what you did. The neat thing about a POD is you could change it any point in time that you want to. So, Carrie, did you see any other questions in there that people have? Or have you listeners that have survived this, do you have questions?
There was one question, but I'm not sure if you could answer it. Would the large firm in Montana be environmental law, or is that an estate planning law firm?
Okay, it's a law firm that just what you would say with 175 attorneys, you can cover the waterfront, so to speak. So this particular firm does do it all, so to speak. And you notice we're very careful about saying the name, because the idea is that Montana does not give names. And even the individuals that have reviewed our Mont guides, we agreed in the beginning that it was their service to the state of Montana and their own pro bono work, that no names would be used. So I haven't recognized anybody other than Ed Eck, and that was in his capacity as a professor at the law school. Okay. Any others?
Yes. Someone was advised to go have a non-contest clause.
Oh, that's one of those that you can put in your will that indicates that if anybody sues or is unhappy about what they receive, then they don't receive anything. And those can be certainly effective for scaring people to death. But at the same time, if there was a situation where fraud was involved, undue influence in the individual that was writing the will, you know, you have to kind of look at that as well. But sometimes it's just people angry because they didn't get what they thought they should receive. And my goodness, you know, what in the world says we deserve when somebody dies to receive something? But that's another philosophy there. Okay, well, Carrie, how about you do your magic wheel? Can you do that for us today? And see who is going to receive. Jane, what was in the box? Were those coasters?
Well, our team member in the foundation, so there are just two of us who work in the Montana 4-H Foundation, and Janae Godin-Finn took that over. And I want to say that there, it may be that it has like the microfiber cleaner and some different things. I'm not sure because she took that over. So I'd hate to say I know what the surprise is.
Well, that means it's a surprise then for whoever receives it.
Okay, Marsha, are you ready for the
we're ready.
the wheel?
We are excited. So is Danielle on? Yes, I bet, because Carrie removes people's names as they leave. So we've got a winner today. So again, I would like to express appreciation to the Montana 4-H Foundation for sponsoring our Fabulous Fridays. It's really been pretty fabulous to do this every Friday, and we look forward to offering, I hope, again next fall, and maybe we will come up with some different topics. So those of you that are very interested, don't hesitate to email some ideas of something that you would like to know. I'd like to thank our guests, Jane and Tara. And thank you, Mandie. It's been great doing co-hosting with you. And a special thank you to Carrie for getting all the stuff done that needs to be done with the website and helping us with this. It's just a real MSU team effort. So we wish everybody happiness, be safe, and keep healthy till we meet again. Bye-bye.
So